Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks.
Hi there, everybody. Okay, I'll tell you what, this is going to be a little helter-skelter here at the beginning, simply because there's so much going on, a lot of moving parts, and I'm going to be completely blunt with you. I'm not going to scream at the top of my lungs claiming that I know what's going on, and claiming that I know all the different angles of everything that's taking place, because I just don't. There is so much happening right now, on numerous different wavelengths, with lots of people controlling lots of different levers, that again, I'm not going to scream at the top of my lungs that one thing is happening or something else is happening or I'm for certain this is happening. The fact is, there's just too many moving parts and I'm just not sure. I really don't know what's going on. And unfortunately, in war, deception is a part of the game. And we're not going to be told directly what's happening all of the time and why things are happening the way that they're happening. Point being, I'm going to start here with the business of Syria. Initially, I was under the impression, and it still may be true, I'm not sure, that Assad, the president of Syria, was a Christian and is a Christian. Lots of indications that he may be dead, that he and his wife and his family are dead as they were attempting to leave. Some indications that he's alive. I have no idea which. A lot of people are saying he was trying to leave in a plane, given all of the different movements of weapons from point A to point B and a number of other things. Again, I'm not sure what's going on there. I know that a lot of people are instantly going to say, well, this is the Greater Israel Project, and this is exactly what Assad and the Jews have in store. I fully understand that angle too, and I take that into consideration also. There's no doubt about that one either. I do also know that 2% of Syrians are Christians, and they're caught in the middle of all of this and everything that's taking place there. So I have a couple of posts here that I want to read. Again, I'm not going to claim that I know everything that's going on in all of the moving parts. I know that there were some Q drops pointing to this, specifically on December 7th from many years ago, with a picture of Assad and Al-Walid, one of the Saudi Arabia bad guys that was associated, of course, with Barack Obama. Again, a picture of two individuals doesn't mean much to me because, again, you have pictures of lots of people with lots of other different people that maybe they didn't like. I do know that one of the angles in all of this has to do with, of course, all of the money that's gone to Ukraine and how those weapons and XYZ were making their way back towards Syria for the, of course, Barack Obama, Mossad, CIA-created ISIS and all of those so-called quote-unquote rebels and everything else. And that they, of course, have been using our weapons in Syria against Syrians and against other individuals, but also the angle that it's quite possible that the entire command and general command of the Syrian army was just paid off by Jews. So they were paid to stand down, and they basically said, hey, look, we're going to start flooding your country with a little bit more money. We're going to pay your generals to go away and stand down. Your soldiers are going to do the same. Tell your soldiers to do the same, rather, and then we'll get Assad out of there, and then it'll be our playground for God knows how long. With that said, who's to say that certain sections of Syria haven't been the playground for the bad guys for a very long time? Again, the north, if I'm not mistaken, the northeastern section of Syria is basically owned by the United States, and the very southern western portion of Syria is owned by Israel. And then you have other portions of it, again, that are kind of split off. But like I said, it's very confusing, and there's a lot of moving parts here, but I find this wavelength of thinking and all of these different angles and trying to arrive at a problem far more useful, of course, than sitting in a math class and doing an algebra problem. So let me just read this particular post. Again, this is from 4chan, so you can take it with a grain of salt, but it says the following. And this was dated on the 7th of December of this year, 2024. It says, crazy how out of fucking nowhere, there's heavily armed terrorists in Syria about to overthrow it, right? Wrong. They said, turns out Biden's using Ukraine as a proxy to funnel U.S. weapons to Syrian terrorists in a last-ditch effort to overthrow their government. Syria hasn't had terrorists this well armed since Obama. I'm honestly surprised Biden hasn't just dug out the CIA's heart attack gun and used back in the 70s. And then they have a story here from Newsweek. Iran blames U.S. and Ukraine for Syrian rebel advances. It says Iran has blamed the United States and Ukraine for recent advances made by Syrian rebels in a surprise offensive against the Syrian government. On Friday, the Iranian state-affiliated Mer news agency reported, you're going to have to forgive me on these names here, Mochaba something, Damirchilo, an aide to Iran's foreign minister, criticized Ukraine and the U.S. for supporting terrorism in Syria. Terrorism is in quotes. In particular, the report outlined how the Iranian official condemned the illegal trade of weapons received from the United States by some Ukrainian officials and Ukraine's support for listed terrorist groups in Syria, unquote. It says, referencing the use of takfiri, or foreign militant groups, to operate in Syria against the Assad regime, Damirchilo, if that's their name, condemned the deployment of these fighters, which he said was leading to the destabilization of the West Asia group. He described this approach as an unethical policy that violates established principles and norms of international law, unquote. There's also a theory bouncing around that a lot of uranium was making its way to Syria and that was going to be used by whom I have no idea, and against whom I have no idea. But again, to foment more war or the need for more attacks, and certainly, as we can predict, certainly Israeli Jews and Jews in the area of using all of that weaponry, either against their own people or against others, and then, of course, playing the victim and saying, well, Iran did it. This was Iran's fault, or Syria did it, and it was Syria's fault. So we need to now attack them with whatever we have at our disposal, and the United States has to get involved in 1,000 other things. It's quite possible, and I'm just throwing this out there because I don't know, but it's quite possible that a massive war and a massive false flag was de-escalated as a result of all of this. That Assad knew that he was outnumbered, again, being a Christian allegedly, and of course knowing that the Holocaust wasn't real, and that Jews were the enemy. But he had no choice, because again, he was surrounded and outnumbered. So he split. Again, whether he's alive or not is another matter. Donald Trump spoke about the particular issue, for whatever it's worth. Again, I don't know his involvement in all of this either. But he said, quote, Assad is gone. He has fled his country. His protector, Russia, led by Vladimir Putin, was not interested in protecting him any longer. There was no reason for Russia to be there in the first place. They lost all interest in Syria because of Ukraine. Where close to 600,000 Russian soldiers lay wounded or dead in a war that should never have started and could go on forever. Russia and Iran are in a weakened state right now. One because of Ukraine and a bad economy, the other because of Israel and its fighting success. Likewise, Zelensky and Ukraine would like to make a deal to stop this madness. They have ridiculously lost 400,000 soldiers and many more civilians. There should be an immediate ceasefire and negotiations should begin. Too many lives are being so needlessly wasted, too many families destroyed, and if it keeps going, it can turn into something much bigger and far worse. I know Vladimir well. This is his time to act. China can help. The world is waiting. Again, I don't know all the pieces and moving parts here. I'm not even sure that we're supposed to know. But what we can guess is that there is something far worse that was probably de-escalated, if I had to take a guess. And we also, again, know that there's a likelihood that massive pipelines and oil pipelines are seeking to be built from Qatar all the way through Saudi Arabia into Syria and then into Europe, and then potentially another one again, potentially again from Kuwait, or I should say certainly Iran, all the way through, again, the middle of Iran and then west towards Syria and into Europe also. So, again, there's a lot of discussion of the Iran-Iraq-Syria pipeline, and then the Qatar-Turkey pipeline, with Russia apparently backing the first and the United States backing the second. Again, I don't doubt this angle either. There's just too many moving parts here. There is, of course, the always ongoing religious wars. And religious wars have been going on since the beginning of time. This is not a new thing. Christians are caught in the middle sometimes, certainly in between Jews and Muslims. And it's all about money. Who's profiting from which angle, and who wants to sit on top or even sit in the back with a little more of a fuller wallet, and 1,000 other things. But at the exact same time, if Assad was a Christian, he didn't stand a chance because, like I said a second ago, he was surrounded. So there was this post again from Europa the Last Battle Action over on Gab. They said, quote, Assad's government in Syria have been ousted and overthrown by a coup/armed rebellion that may have been funded and supported from abroad. A total effing travesty. Assad was the one sensible guy in the region, hence the endless gay ops and coup attempts since at least 2014. ISIS, Mossad, CIA, U.S. State Department, al-Nusra, if I'm saying that right, white helmets, moderate rebels, quote unquote, are all the same thing, sponsored and funded by Israel and Israeli lobby that control the United States, especially via the neoconservative Rhino GOP faction. Assad never gassed, quote unquote, his own people. And of course, that's also true. I remember that happening back in the day, and I thought, that doesn't look right. None of that looks right. They're just spraying hoses in kids' faces and then wiping their faces down real fast, and there were blue helmets everywhere and white helmets everywhere, and they were just catching all of this on film as all these kids are panicking. Well, yeah, if you're a child and you're getting hosed in the face, and there's an adult running around and lots of adults running around wiping your face as fast as humanly possible, that doesn't mean anything. I'd cry too if somebody was hosing me in the face and, smashing my nose against the palm of their hand on a constant basis if I was a child. I mean, it looked fake at the outset, but again, they show this to people on the idiot box and they get them to believe what they have to believe. And even if that means that they show it to them to pacify them and to get them, get people to not pay attention, then mission accomplished, I suppose. But it goes on here and it says, this is an Israeli-U.S. media invention that was created with the help of the white helmets that they helped to fund and protect, of course, in order to gain international sympathy for their gay-ass coup attempts. It says Syria is going to degenerate into either becoming a proxy state for Israel, or at least the southern part of Syria bordering Israel will be absorbed by the Zionist state. F for Assad. Unquote. So again, like I said a second ago, the southern western part of Syria has really always been occupied by Israel. That's not a new thing. That's just something that's always been happening. But it was Obama that was allowing this to take place because he's a Muslim. He's not a Christian. And again, he's interested in surviving and he's interested in money. In his latest speech at his own foundation, the dude sounded panicked. He sounded like he was getting caught, because he was blaming everybody for the very thing that he's been doing this entire time. So again, there's endless moving parts with this. I can see the different angles. I truly can. I also, and people have to understand this particular angle, which is the one that's difficult for people to sit on and potentially understand, which is there's probably something else going on that isn't at face value, that's being discussed at face value. So there's this other dimension of what's actually taking place there, usually regarding the transfer of money from one place to another in order to do something far worse than what's already happened. Again, the post earlier describing the movement of United States weapons from Ukraine to Syria to again destabilize that entire area, yes, I don't think there's any doubting that. The same thing has been happening, of course, in Ukraine itself. I think one of the interesting angles in this too is that we can take this opportunity to always pay attention as to who's not bringing up any of this, let alone multiple angles of what might be going on there. There are going to be numerous individuals, again, who are funded by Jews who are simply not going to touch this with a 10-foot pole. Certainly plenty of them regarding Khan Inc. Let me give you one quick example. If you bounce over to Charlie Kirk's X account and you look at the different posts that he has here, which again, most of them are self-congratulatory nonsense, but he just has one post about Syria and he just says this: "If you thought Assad was bad, wait till you see what is coming next." Unquote. Again, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. He's not focusing on this at all. There are endless people who aren't focusing on this whatsoever. Again, if they were believing, and probably, again, if you were to confront him about this and say he never used chemical weapons against his own people, there was no proof of that, Charlie Kirk would immediately disagree with you and call you a conspiracy theorist. See, there's no thinking in that. There's no analysis in any of that. And of course, he's completely controlled by Jews, and we fully understand that. He's more focused, again, on Donald Trump shaking Macron's hand in a very domineering way, which is fine. I understand the comms associated with that. It's basically, I'm stronger than you are. I know more than you do. I'm in control and you're not. Go pound sand. I'm all for that. And I like that. But again, I do believe that there's more going on here, but we can't listen to the people like Charlie Kirk and have him break down what he thinks is actually good for all of us and good for the people who live there. It's all just, I don't know, it's all window dressing nonsense. So, with that aside for just a minute here, again, there's a number of moves that confuse me. And I'm fully admitting this because, again, this is something that you're not going to hear those people say. They're not going to sit back and say, you know what, I'm confused about this. And there's not going to be individuals, again, who say, well, this seems strange. I have some serious concerns about Bitcoin and artificial intelligence and all of this stuff. Again, I don't like it. I just flat out don't like it. I don't like the sound of it. I don't like the way that it's being peddled. I'm a very large admirer of Whitney Webb and her investigative journalism and her work and diving into the companies and connections and the names of all of the people that are associated with a lot of this different kind of stuff. Again, I don't know what their larger agenda is as far as, again, pushing artificial intelligence, of course, and pushing Bitcoin and digital currency and all of this. And is it a backdoor way of pushing digital currency? It could be. I'm not entirely sure. I just know that it seems highly suspicious and it seems really odd to me. I'm not a fan. But if there's another reason as to why it's being pushed, and if that's to X out something that was worse that was coming down the pipeline, then great. But at the same time, we're not getting any explanation from any one particular group of people or any singular, again, alternative media journalist, so to speak, who's providing one answer that is actually the answer. And I understand that, again, we can't sit around and wait for people to give us the answer. But what I don't like doing is, and I'm sure you're in the same boat, is sitting around and wondering what's actually going to happen one way or another. Again, just back to the Syria thing. If supply lines and evil supply lines are being cut, and evil funding is being cut from, of course, our government to foreign countries, which again is seeking to destabilize other foreign countries. If those supply lines are being cut, that's a good thing. If it's happening at the advancement of Jews and Israel and the IDF and Mossad, I don't like that at all either. So, again, who's benefiting in all of this? I fully understand people would scream at the top of their lungs, it's all Jews 100% of the time. I have no doubt that they're always trying to profit from one form of chaos or another, whether they're involved or not. I mean, they're always in the background, wringing their hands, trying to profit and trying to take advantage as much as humanly possible, certainly at the detriment of Christians or anybody who isn't them. We fully know that, and we know that that's going on. But again, how deep does this go? I'm just fully going to admit I don't know. I really don't know. Too many moving parts here. But equally as foolish, I think, is not saying I don't know. Saying I don't know means that you're open to numerous angles, but you're always searching for the answer. I think what's foolish is for one person to allude to, like what Charlie Kirk did. Well, wait until you see what happens regarding this. I mean, that's not an answer. That's nothing. That's ambiguity, and that's exactly what, of course, Mossad would want, because that's who pays him. So, again, this kind of stuff, and anybody taking a hard line and saying, well, this is the only thing that's happening and this is the answer, I think that those individuals are equally as foolish. Because again, there can be a face value agenda that people are looking at and diving into, and I love that. I love that people do that, and that needs to happen. But at the exact same time, I think people have to consider that there is something else going on that we aren't going to know about, but we shouldn't be sitting around waiting for Charlie Kirk to tell everybody. I mean, that's completely retarded. Again, the element in all of this that to me, of course, is the most disturbing is not only the innocent loss of life of individuals that are caught in all of this, but it is the slaughter of Christians and the destruction of Christian-owned property and churches and grave sites and a number of other things. They're being completely wiped out, and they're being wiped out by the IDF. And I don't like that at all. And no one with a brain should. Which should continue to prove to everybody that these churches that are spewing Israel's your greatest ally are all frauds. All these people are your enemy. Because if they're 100% fine with Christian history being destroyed out of Europe and the Middle East, well, then they're not your friend. And that really is one of the angles that, again, even the conservative media people aren't bringing up. They never touch the fact that Christians are being slaughtered. They view Palestinians the exact same way. They see brown skin and they go, well, they have to be Muslims. They're probably terrorists. That's the way that it is. It clearly isn't the case. A great deal of them are Christians. And again, their churches are being wiped out and they're being wiped out with them. So it's all awful. There's no doubt about it. And I don't support any of that by any stretch of the imagination, no matter who it is that's supporting it. Again, are there other things happening behind the scenes? There very well could be. But the death is very real. And the destruction of that property and that historic property and those historic properties across the Middle East is also very real. So I don't want that to be lost, certainly on this audience, and I don't, you can criticize me all you'd like, I suppose, but I think that's something that everybody can pretty much agree on, that that's not a good thing. But again, when you're the minority in an area like that, certainly that giant sandbox over there, they're completely surrounded. They don't have a choice, and they don't have a chance. So, continue to pray for them, I suppose, but they're just outnumbered, and they're just surrounded, and it's awful. So I'll continue to dive into this as much as I can and read as much as I can about it, but lots of moving parts, and it's warfare, and it's designed to be confusing, and it's designed, again, to get people to pick sides that they wouldn't normally pick if they had all of the facts, and I'm openly saying I don't have all of the facts on all of this because there's too many moving parts for just me to pay attention to. So there you go. Again, that's my honest take. If I was a liar, I would say, this is happening, this is the way that it is, there's no other way, this is it, this is the answer. But I don't know that, and neither does anybody else, frankly. So there you go. Okay. I want to mention this too. Again, this is part of the AI problem. This had to do with, of course, the insurance guy who got killed, which nobody seems to really care about. But this was just a couple of days after that happened from Neoscope, and it was titled, Murdered Insurance CEO Had Deployed an AI to Automatically Deny Benefits for Sick People. Anger at the insurance industry is reached a boiling point. Has reached a boiling point? Typo. Either way, I mean, you pretty much get it. We're fully aware that these companies are using these computer systems to X people out because they do it in the medical industry all of the time and have been using AI systems for quite some time now in the medical industry. Again, by the time the general public wakes up to artificial intelligence, which was just a couple of years ago, these companies were already using it. I mean, that's what an algorithm is. An algorithm is artificial intelligence deciding what words can be said, whose account can be promoted, whose can't, and so on and so on. Why wouldn't they use it to basically profit in any line of work? So they've been doing this for quite some time, and people, fortunately, are waking up to it, which is a good thing. But I don't like the advancement of artificial intelligence under any circumstance because it's always human beings designing those algorithms and those computer programs to, of course, X certain people out and include others. This is being used across the board without a doubt. I'm sure colleges and universities use these AI systems and have been for quite some time when it comes to recruiting. I mean, if you've ever seen any of these really horrible, college movies about college enrollment that exist, my kid got into this college or this school, and let's take a look at the office building where these adults sit down in a circle and they go through every single application one at a time. And then they read through the application and they either say yes or no. Do you think that they really still do that? Or do you think that they just throw these electronic, because again, every application is electronic, they throw them into an AI system and then the AI system hand selects them and just picks them out digitally? That's probably the way that it goes, and it's probably been like that for quite some time. So I don't like the advancement of AI by any stretch of the imagination. It's a program that sits in the hands of a select few who claim to know what they're doing, but there's no way that they would not have a nefarious means for doing it or a motive for doing it. I feel like they certainly would, which again is why there's a lot of this advancement. At least I think that's the motive behind all of it. I can't see it as being positive by any stretch. You can't replace the human mind with a robot and expect things to work out fine. Again, the people in control of the robots are ultimately the problem. I'll get into that a little bit later when it comes to this surveillance state, of course, because again, Amazon sells these tools on their buying platform for anybody to actually buy, and people are stupid enough to actually buy them. I mean, you can spend $1,600 on a robot that rolls around your house or wherever it is that you live, talking to you and surveilling you, and again, basically just mapping out your entire property. And then it plugs again directly into your Ring doorbell, and it knows who's where and when they show up and when they don't. It's beyond disturbing. But again, the normalization of this is equally as disturbing. And people again thinking that, well, this is the future, and look at this, brand new toy that I have, and this is going to work out great for everybody. I don't see that being the case. I really don't. I remember seeing, I think it was in Rocky IV, the movie Rocky IV, when Rocky was in Russia and he's fighting Drago or whatever his name was, Dolph Lundgren's character. And, Rocky and his wife were over there. And, I mean, who was babysitting his kids back in America? It was this giant housekeeper robot. Does anybody remember that? I mean, that freaked me out back then. And I saw Rocky IV in the movie theater when I was a kid, and I was like, what is this robot doing there? Like, this seems strange, and they're having conversations with it, and it's beyond odd. But I mean, that's the world we live in now. And people actually think that this is okay. This is, again, the digital landscape and the digital walls closing in on everybody that people, again, are just pacified to, apparently. A lot of people aren't, and they know that it's beyond horrible, but, man, I'm just shocked again that people continue to buy it. Take Mike DeWine, for example. I mean, here's a transition. Mike DeWine in the state of Ohio, instead of getting illegal Haitians out of Springfield, Ohio, what's he actually done? He's thrown up tens of millions of dollars in order to basically bring in video game simulation driving machines for Haitians to learn how to drive and for foreigners to learn how to drive. What happened to driving school? Oh, that's right. It's not driving school because you can't get a legal driver's license if you're not a citizen. So basically what Mike DeWine's openly admitted to is funneling millions of taxpayer dollars into creating a driving simulation video game for illegal Browns in Ohio to basically play in order to sharpen their illegal driving skills while they're driving illegally. Anybody who thinks that this is a good idea has lost their mind. And anybody supporting DeWine on any of this, again, they've lost their minds too. They're all in it, and they're all receiving some kind of a kickback. Hey, look, a video game. Yeah, we've been playing driving video games since the 80s. But when you bring foreigners here who can't legally drive and they're driving, they belong in jail, and then deport them. This is going to get real interesting, certainly in the state of Ohio with local governments, and of course it's going to get interesting everywhere. Who's going to stand in the way of deporting these people? And are all of these people going to be deported? They better be. They better be deported 100%. There was also this is from Just the News last week. Ohio bill would stop tax credits for renting to illegal immigrants. This is a good thing. Question, of course, is why was this in place to begin with? It said the state budgeted more than $400 million for low-income housing tax credits over the next 4 years. A bill that would stop low-income housing owners from getting a tax credit if they rent to people in their country illegally is moving quickly through the Ohio House as the end of the 2-year legislative session nears. It says state law allows the Ohio Housing Finance Agency to give federal and state tax credits to residential developers who agree to hold units for low-income tenants. The bill would stop project owners from renting to someone in the country illegally. Good. That's a first good step. But again, why a tax credit for holding on to low-income tenants? Why not just have property? And if you're a property builder, why not just build different kinds of properties for different kinds of people at different prices and different sizes? It says, quote, as Ohio grows, lawful citizens need to be a priority. Again, the fact that that has to be a sentence in America should show people how bad things are. It says low-income housing should be available to citizens and lawful immigrants of Ohio, not illegal immigrants. No kidding. They're not immigrants, by the way. They're aliens. They're illegal aliens. It says money our state appropriates should be for the people who pay taxes. And this legislation is a first step of many to make sure that stays true, Representative Scott Wiggum, Republican, Wayne County, said. Prospective tenants would have to provide proof of legal presence in the United States by providing either a certified copy of their birth certificate, a current valid U.S. passport, a consular report of birth abroad from the State Department, a certificate of naturalization or citizenship, a document from Immigration Services, or a current valid driver's license or ID card. The state budgeted more than $400 million for low-income housing tax credits over the next 4 years. Yeah, get rid of it. Sign it. And if DeWine doesn't sign it, you have enough votes in the House and the Senate to override his veto. So just override it and get it done with. I've said it before again, DeWine's an empty suit in the state of Ohio. Complete empty suit. He's just there. No one likes him. Only the sycophants like him. And those people are few and far between. So Ohio's got to clean up its act. I think it's in the process of doing that, which is good. But it has to get better here. And again, this should prove to people, why even have a governor? I mean, why even have one? If you have the majority in the House and the Senate and you have the ability to override a veto, then what's the point of a governor to begin with? So, yeah, I don't know. That's my 2 cents on that. But moving on here. Education. I have 2 stories. This might be a shorter episode, by the way. My apologies on that, although I have a great deal of jab-related things to get to. But I want to revisit a particular issue here, which came to my attention from a previous guest on the show who comes from Texas. And this was an interesting exchange. And this, again, is an issue having to do with how the entire education system, of course, has quotas. And they have to graduate students. Whether it's K12, college, university, doesn't matter. They have to push them out. You can stick around forever, and again, you can take all the classwork and do a number of different things and take the tests and whatever else. But there's also this little hitch in the giddy-up, so to speak, that has to do with K12 schools, and apparently, how you don't even have to take the tests. You can just run out the clock on test taking, certainly in the state of Texas, and they're going to graduate you anyway. Now, part of me likes this a lot. I think this is absolutely hilarious because it's students gaming the system. They know that the system is fraudulent. They know they don't have to show up to actually graduate, so why show up? And then, of course, part of me says they're cheating themselves out of being honest to some extent and just doing what they're told to do and whatever else. But again, with all of that aside, it should show people that the entire system is fraudulent. So here's what they sent me. I put this up on social media with their permission. They said, no problem, go for it. I'm just going to read this verbatim from top to bottom here. They texted me this. They said the following. You're going to love this. They said this past week, we had to make up days for students who had either not taken or had not passed the state test, called the STAR, S-T-A-A-R, in Texas, and they need to graduate. I have 10 to 12 students in my first period class. that were on the lists to report to testing at the start of school. None of them showed up all week. That's a third of my class, and that's just one class. The list was enormous. Word is out among the students that if you don't take the test or pass the test, they'll give you a waiver to graduate. This is going to spread, and I love it. I responded back and said, incredible, they're gaming the system, it's perfect. They said all their lies that they need this to graduate and all their threats to revoke their transfers are backfiring big time. Every day this week we get an announcement, quote, teachers, check your email. There is a list of students that need to report to their testing locations, unquote. It says a few minutes later, administration comes marching into my room with their clipboards and they say, quote, okay, listen up. We need the following students. And then the teacher says, they're not here. And then administration says back to them, you checked? Teacher says back, I checked. Administration says back to them, okay, well, if they show up, send them down. Teacher says, I will. They wrapped up and said, I have a senior in my first period class named so-and-so on this list to test Monday through Thursday. They miss school Monday through Thursday and show up late on Friday thinking they're in the clear. 20 minutes into class, I get a call from the front office saying that so-and-so is on their way to their room and to send them down. They said, please send them down to the testing center. So I write out a pass with their name on it and the room number that they're supposed to report to, but they never make it to the room. They got wind that Friday was a makeup day and turned around and walked right out of the front door of the building. Blank is my hero, referring to the student, unquote. Again, I find this funny because, again, everybody has a quota. Everybody has a quota that they have to meet. All of this testing that takes place, all of this credit recovery that takes place in American schools across the nation, they all have to get students to participate in this. But if the students run out the clock, well, they're going to be given a waiver to graduate anyway, and they know this. And if they know this, then again, why even show up? It makes perfect sense, and I don't blame them. I really don't. Yeah, it's dishonest, but the entire system is dishonest. So if they're playing the system to their own advantage, well, more power to them, I suppose. I just find the whole thing to be funny. And frankly, when I first read that, it reminded me again of the naivete among even adults who understand that they have these quotas that they have to meet, because if they don't meet them, then they lose their job. Again, when I was in Toronto at the AERA conference back in 2019, I was sitting in this stupid circle very early in the morning, and I think I've told this story before, but there was this just really horrible woman, again, dumber than a bag of forks, and she's sitting there and she's talking about how she supervises student teachers. And then she was complaining again about how her department was basically throwing more and more student teachers her way, and that, well, if they don't fill out all the necessary paperwork and they don't pass them, well, then that looks poor on them. And I said, well, yeah, why are you surprised about this? I said, that's the way that the business works. You're given a set amount of student teachers to observe and evaluate and watch, of course, in their home classes and wherever it is that they're doing their guest teaching. And if you don't pass them, then that looks bad on you. And she, of course, was bragging about having a high pass rate. Well, all of our graduates graduate, and anybody who passes through my student teaching program and my evaluations, they all pass with, a very high grade point average or, excellent evaluations because they're all doing exactly what I'm telling them. And I looked her right in the face and I said, of course you would say that. Because filling out those evaluations in the positive is remarkably easy to do, because if you fill them out in the negative, the university and your bosses are going to look at you like you're doing something wrong. But if you're giving everybody A's and a passing grade, well, then they're not going to bat an eye because, again, it looks good for them too as far as they're concerned. It's like what I said in the last episode. The entire business of education is fraudulent. The entire thing is dishonest. All you have to do is give everybody an A, everybody passes, everybody gets a check mark, everybody gets a golden star, and no one's going to bat an eye. No one's going to ask a question. Very rarely is that going to be the case, unless, of course, a great deal of money is tied to, say, like a charter school. That's usually when a charter school ends up getting caught by the FBI for funneling money because they throw a bunch of teachers in a dark room to fill out test scores and standardize tests for particular schools. And all of a sudden, what was a poor performing school is all of a sudden performing well in the state standardized tests. That's going to turn some heads. That's going to open up some eyes and some ears as to there being potential fraud, which of course there usually is. But the entire evaluation system is fraudulent, always. Well, look at all these people we graduated, and look at all these valedictorians. It doesn't mean anything. It's just fraud. They have a job to do, and that's oil the machine and keep the machine moving, and keep that conveyor belt moving of all of those students on that conveyor belt. If one falls off every now and again, fine, who cares? But get everybody else in the meat grinder and then get them out the door. I mean, that's it. So yeah, they have to pass people. But everybody's accountable for having students be passed and move through the system, because ultimately that's the baseline bottom dollar number that schools need. It isn't necessarily grade point average, it's how many students graduated. And I'm using finger quotes on that one, graduated. How many students got a piece of paper saying you're done? It was, again, like one of my last days teaching high school. Certainly, I would say whatever that was, the last spring where I was a school teacher. I had a senior in my class. He came back after seniors had already left and graduated, and he came back the last couple of days of school, and I looked at him and I said, "Why are you here?" And he said, "The entire school district just told me that I didn't have an entire science credit in order to graduate." I said, "You're kidding me." He said, "No." He said, "They called me, sent a letter home, and they said I have to come back to school for one full day and sit in front of a computer for 6 hours and just answer questions. Whether I pass or fail is irrelevant. They just want me to do it, and then they give me my diploma." That's the game. I mean, an entire semester/year of coursework just got summarized into 6 hours of sitting in front of a computer for one day, and then he graduated, and that was it. And I remember looking at him and I said, "So how are you answering these questions?" And he goes, "Well, they're all multiple choice and true false. So all I have to do is just click basically on the answer that I think is the answer. And if I move on to the next page, it'll tell you as to whether or not the answer was right or wrong. So you can just go back, select another answer, and then just keep moving forward and select the correct answer almost every single time." It's fraud. It's that simple. There isn't anything honest about it. And so again, to transition here from tests to the evaluation of actual teachers, if you think that taking tests and pushing students through the system is fraudulent, which of course it is, how about the retention of horrible teachers? This again is where discretion comes into play, and where building administration and district administration failed even their own contracts, and then of course demoralized the entire environment even more. I'm going to revisit a story here because I have some new paperwork associated with this. But in the local middle school where I live, and again, I've brought this up on the show before, there was a language arts teacher in the 7th grade by the name of Drew Edwards. This woman, who again was allegedly in possession of student drugs and giving fanny packs to students who were in possession of drugs in an effort to hide the smell of their marijuana that the students themselves were possessing, not only on their person, but in her classroom, and that she knew that this was all happening. The entire district was engaging in a cover-up regarding her behavior toward these students. Now, why is that the case? They were engaging in this cover-up because they're leftists, they're gay, and they're virtue signaling. And the guilty students are probably minorities, and poor minorities. So, again, it checks all of the boxes. It checks all the virtue signaling boxes. Blacks don't break the law. We can't throw and expel black students out of our school because we think that makes us look bad. And we certainly can't get rid of school teachers who are trying to, quote-unquote, accommodate these kinds of behaviors and make excuses for these kinds of behaviors. Because if we do that, well, then everybody's going to end up finding out. But as we all know, the cover-up is always worse than the crime. And that's exactly what happened here. The entire school district sought to cover this up, And the district officials sought to cover this up, allegedly. And it's pretty clear that that was the case, because it wasn't until the public caught wind of this that they ended up actually attempting to discipline this particular teacher. Now, here's the sort of end game on all of this. As a result of the police report being made known to the public through an open records request, her discipline file has been released, or certainly portions of it, allegedly. And what's happened is as of the beginning of, or I should say certainly right before Thanksgiving break, on the 22nd of November, this Drew Edwards female language arts teacher has resigned, but they're still employed by the district. In fact, throughout the entire month of December, they're on paid administrative leave. They're going to show back up to school and continue to teach in a different classroom, in a different location in the building. So they're being accommodated at the expense of other individuals in the building, of course. And now they have to change what they were doing to accommodate the unprofessional actions of this particular teacher, who then apparently is going to end up resigning formally and leaving the actual position in July at the end of their contract year in 2025. Let me read through a piece of this because this is very telling and remarkably interesting. And again, only when a school district gets caught are they actually going to rely on the policies, procedures, state and district law when it comes to holding one of these individuals accountable and one of their own accountable. Again, keep in mind, they tried to cover this entire thing up, and because the public caught wind of it, they got caught, which means they had to actually do their job. Again, this is one small town. This is one location. This happens all of the time. It says in one of these documents here, this pre-disciplinary hearing meeting notification for paid administrative leave from the superintendent, Ed Thoreau, to Drew Edwards. Again, this is how these letters typically read, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes it just says, we need to meet with you, and they don't say why. It says, this is to notify that there was a pre-disciplinary meeting to discuss the violation of the written directive provided to you on November 8th of 2024 by Principal Thurer. Failure to follow a reasonable request, unsafe learning environment that disrupts the educational environment, and possible inappropriate interactions, communications, and relationships with students. It says you are placed on paid administrative leave effective today, November 18th of 2024. You are not to come to the school property, attend any Talawanda activities, and communicate with students or staff. These actions may be unprofessional, create safety concerns, it says, hinder your ability to complete your job's description, and be against school district policy and procedures. Now, when I read through these, and these particular codes of their conduct that they allegedly violated, why would you keep this person on instead of firing them? And just hire a full-time sub if you can? Because again, if these actions are unprofessional and create safety concerns and hinder their ability to complete their job description, why wouldn't you just get rid of them? It says, quote, the pre-disciplinary hearing meeting will determine if there were possible violations of Board Policy 3210, Staff Ethics, 3213, Student Supervision and Welfare, 3120.01, Job Descriptions, 3139, Staff Discipline, 3122.01 Drug-Free Workplace, 3140 Termination and Resignation, 3142 Non-Renewal of a Teacher Contract, 3215 Tobacco Use Prevention Ohio Revised Code, Code of Professional Conduct for Ohio Educators, Collective Bargaining Unit 7.11 Termination, Non-Renewal or Employee Disciplinary, and it says 11.21 Resident Educator Program and failure to follow a reasonable request directive. Now here's what she did, and I'm going to go through this as best I can. What's funny is that of course she was evaluated by the previous building administrator, and it appears that at least 2 of those evaluations were never even finished. Now, I have to mention this sidebar because this is kind of important, and this is the much larger picture. Very few teacher education programs in the United States of America have actual educators, again, teacher educators, those training to be teachers themselves or administrators later on down the line if they choose to or whatever. Very rarely do they cover contracts and verbiage in actual legal contracts. They don't give them a copy of their contracts and say, okay, here's an example of a contract that you're going to sign when you become an educator. Read it, word for word. This is a legal document. Most teachers, again, as you've heard me say before, they'll just sign on the dotted line when they get hired. They don't actually read their contracts. They don't actually read their codes of conduct. They just operate based on intuition. And if their intuition is bad, or their judgment is bad, well, they're going to violate their contracts. It's no different with administrators. Administrators see a check, and then they see a dotted line. And they sign on the dotted line to get that check, but they don't bother reading any of the legalese that is in between those two actions. So teacher education programs, my point here is that they are to blame also because they're not preparing school teachers for what the environment actually is. Again, no different than handing a Haitian a set of keys in a car and going, go get them. It's the same kind of problem, which is why they end up getting fired. They think that they're doing the right thing, maybe, as a school teacher, when in fact they're violating numerous policies and numerous codes of conduct and even state law potentially. But again, the school district doesn't seem to understand this. They don't seem to understand across the nation that teacher education programs are really the forefront of this lack of education. It's all team building and activism and political ideologues leading the show and, how are you going to make a change and how are you going to prevent kids from the system and blah, 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 and how are you going to favor students and, give them a leg up when you can. It has nothing to do with the law. It has nothing to do with maintaining your employment. You would think that at the beginning, middle, and end of a teacher education program, all you would be learning about is contracts and the law, but they don't teach it. Which again is why teachers like this get caught up in the meat grinder because they have no idea that the meat grinder is always spinning and waiting to spit them out. So here's what this reprimand says. It's a little lengthy and there's a lot of redacted stuff here, but then what you'll hear in this is you'll hear them do a complete role reversal as a school district. They'll make it sound like they've been communicating with her and everything is fine, no problem, she's doing what we're asking, only to find out that she hasn't been doing what they're asking when it comes to communicating with students and creating disruptions in the hallway and in her own classroom because she's trying to be friends with these students. That right there is also a huge mistake of teacher education programs. They teach these young teachers that they need to have relationships with students. No, it's against your contract, as it turns out. You're not supposed to have relationships with any students. Again, when you hear these liberalized, pacified, brainwashed teachers say things like, well, we wear many hats and we spin many plates and we have to play parent and counselor and babysitter and birthday party host and blah, blah, blah. All those teachers saying that, they're fools. All of them. Your job is to teach your content factually, follow the law, your contract, and then go home and be a responsible citizen, not get on TikTok and lose your mind post-election. And it's not even to feed students. That isn't your job as a school teacher either. Your job is to teach your subject, take attendance, go home, and follow the law. Big problem when they don't read their contracts. Here's what this said. This was on November 8th. This is a chronological order, allegedly, of everything that apparently took place, with a big hiccup right in the middle where she should have been fired, certainly at least back in this past August. It says, this letter serves as a formal written reprimand regarding your conduct and performance on November 6th of 2024, despite previous discussions and attempts to address the matter verbally. So there's been an ongoing problem here. Your actions have not met the standards expected of an employee at Talawanda Middle School, specifically the issues as follows. Number 1, allowing 8th grade students to store items in your classroom. Then there's a redacted part. It says, after explicit instructions to not engage those students. A previous meeting was held on August 28th at approximately 3:10 p.m. with the principal to discuss our concerns and explain expectations. Expectations included, number 1, or I, not allowing 8th grade students to store items in your classroom. 2, not allowing 8th grade students to be in your classroom after school without office notification and permission. 3, not pulling students from ISA, lunch, or other classes to provide them with food items such as bags of chips, which has been provided by you in the past. 4, turn students away or call the office if students attempt to enter her classroom that are not assigned to her or are wanting to store items there, and they will not follow her directive. And 5, call the office if any items are left by an 8th grader, and they will be taken to the office for the students to pick up. If this sounds like student grooming at the hands of a female teacher, it is. It can't get more obvious. Sexual grooming? Possibly. Drug grooming? Possibly. Trying to fill an emotional hole inside of this female, in order to get male attention? Possibly. This is not why you hire people. And when people do this, you reprimand them once and then you cut them loose. It says number 2, the next big item, list of concerns, timeline of events. It says on August 20th of 2024, it was reported, then confirmed on camera, that you went to ISA to remove a blank student's blank and escorted them to your room. It says on the 23rd of August 2024, big redaction, it says the bag was in Miss Edwards' room and did contain blank. The implication here with this redacted portion is that she was in possession of a fanny pack or some bag that had dope in it, and she was allowed to keep her job. The next bullet point says on October 28th of 2024, the conversation over expectations took place. On 9/18/24, the principal did a check-in. Now, it could have been food. I should say that. I don't know if it was drugs or food. It's redacted. But the implication is that it was drugs. Although there's a habit with this teacher apparently of providing food to students. So they checked to see if maybe there was food in there, and there allegedly was. I don't know. Food or drugs, doesn't matter. It says on September 18th of 2024, the principal did a check-in with Miss Edwards after several reports of 8th graders disruption the hallway, and Miss Edwards assured the principal that the blank were not coming down to her any longer. This is a clear example of Miss Edwards understanding the expectations we had discussed. It then says on October 29th of 2024, again, long redaction, it says blank needed blank bag, and that it was in with Miss Eddy. I asked blank, you mean Miss Edwards? They said yes. I went to her room and she said that she didn't know what blank was talking about, that blank were not allowed down there any longer. This is a clear example of Miss Edwards' understanding of the expectations we had discussed. It then says, on November 6th of 2024 at approximately 2:55 p.m., a student was leaving the cafeteria and when questioned said blank was going to Miss Eddy's room to get a donut. The principal walked down to have a conversation with her, it's Miss Edwards of course, told her that blank said that they should come down to her room and that she should call immediately. She said that she would. Later that day, a student, big redaction, the student said that blank had a blank and to get blank phone and that it was in classroom. When they went to the classroom, the teacher reportedly told the student that she had already given it to blank. After the student, big redaction, it says during the review of cameras, the student interviews, it was determined that the teacher had a minimum of 8 8th grade students in her classroom prior to school. Big redaction. Then they interviewed students. Big redaction. It says students also reported that 8th graders are often in her classroom either dropping off bags or stopping in, inferring that it happens frequently. Huge redaction for 2 sections. It says one staff statement was that Miss Edwards told her that the blank are never in her room and that she always shoos them away, or that she shoos them away, a clear example of her understanding of the expectations discussed on the 28th of August. And then they have camera footage timelines. And basically, to summarize it, it shows students walking into her class at all of the times that she was told to not have students. It says, moving forward, you are expected to take the following corrective actions. Adhere to the expectations listed above in bold. Report any suspicious odors, behaviors of students and their materials immediately. Your classroom will be moved to an area where you can more easily observe students, both arriving and leaving, it says, in the area, and we can support you in your improvement efforts. We are confident that you are capable in improving your performance and meeting the standard required for you to do your role, blah, blah, blah. It says, however, please understand that the failure that demonstrates immediate improvement may result in further disciplinary action. Here's what I'm going to say. Just, again, sort of to summarize this kind of quickly. This is where school districts use discretion. If it were somebody that they didn't like, somebody who were older, somebody who was white or male, they would fire them. But this is a woman who is younger, inexperienced, is only taught for a couple of years. And again, it has to do largely with minority students. But she's still breaking the rules. There's still disruptions. There's numerous staff observations that there are disruptions. It's odd behavior because this is not what you're supposed to do, of course, as a school teacher, as I said earlier. She acknowledges all of this. She signs on it on the 8th of November. And then it keeps going down, and again, there's more redacted portions of this. All of this, of course, brings in the administrative element, which by state law, administration always has to send any investigation of any employee to the state level. If they don't do it, they're violating the law, which means you have the superintendent violating the law now. And all of these people are mandatory reporters regarding children and child safety and drug possession, and 1,000 other things. They have to report this to the authorities all of the time, and when they don't, even at the state level in the Ohio Department of Education, they're violating their own contracts, their own licensure code of conduct, and state law. So again, just to review, I have already filed and already did the moment that I got word of this Drew Edwards individual. Because the district didn't do it, because they're covering their own tracks, I filed a formal complaint against her and her license at the state level because any citizen can do this. At the exact same time, I then filed a second one upon receipt of this larger document. And I also included, of course, the superintendent and the human resources director, that, of course, they were the individuals who were covering this up, and that they were the individuals who were clearly not going to send this to the state because they should have sent it to the state back in August. And they didn't. It wasn't until the public got a hold of a police report having to do with her and students in that building that all of this again got blown up. And we forced the hand of the district. But ladies and gentlemen, if they can cover up something this small, imagine what they're covering up that's much larger. And this is happening across the entire United States. And again, people need to know this. They need to know that this is what's happening. But again, citizens have the right in many states to file formal complaints against anybody in the school system who doesn't do what they're supposed to do. That's kind of the ultimate reminder here. So that's enough of that story for now. Unfortunately, she keeps her job for the remainder of her contract year. She's on paid vacation for the rest of this month until January 6th. God only knows why. She should be fired. She isn't. They're tolerating this behavior, of course. This is demoralization. It's demoralizing anybody else in that building who, if the shoe were on the other foot, they would have been fired in the blink of an eye. And that's the end of it. And, of course, it's an indictment on higher education and teacher education programs not preparing endless individuals entering this line of work, which, let's face it, it's not much of a line of work anymore, and it hasn't been for quite some time. But they're not preparing them for their contractual and legal obligations. They don't even run through scenarios of what these particular students are going to be experiencing on a day in and day out basis. They don't even play the scenario game. They don't even have a class where they take an entire semester and they say, we're going to run through numerous scenarios this entire semester of what you're going to experience as a school teacher. From a student vigilant perspective and being vigilant around students, around coworkers, what you're going to see, what you're likely to see, and then what you have a contractual obligation to do the moment that you see it or hear about it or what have you. They, of course, also don't spend a lick of time talking about whistleblowing and how whistleblowing is massive in this business, and even if you do everything correct, it's only a matter of time before you end up catching particular staff members or administration not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Which means if you report them, how's that going to back up on you from a retribution standpoint? This again is why I wrote some of my earlier books for teacher education students. Basically saying, look, if you're going to enter this business, you need to know how dirty it is. Because here are actual scenarios. Here are actual things that you're going to experience, and here's exactly what you're contractually obligated to do. And if you don't do it, you're going to get caught. And if you do it, and you're doing it against the people who are running the show, you're going to get caught. And they're going to get rid of you one way or another. It's a dead end either way you slice it. But again, that's the business. That's the business in a nutshell. It's not a business that's succeeding. It is a business that is designed to fail. And it's failing. And we're watching that failure. In fact, just as a quick summary and a quick revisit to a story I brought up in the last episode, in that school shooting in California that took place where I was assuming that it was an illegal alien, and I had the right assumption because, again, why wouldn't I assume that? They didn't identify the individual. They later ended up allegedly identifying the individual as being this older white man who had a long criminal history. So, either way, illegal or not, the school building let in a guy who had a long criminal history of erratic behavior and illegal behavior. And then again, walked into the building, shot a couple of kids, and then shot himself dead. Again, free open door policy to all lunatics, whether you're illegal or you're actually an American citizen. This is the school system. There's no vetting process that takes place. There's no, hey, stop at the front door, let me see your ID. Here's the police officer. They're going to take a look at your ID. They're going to frisk you. And if you have a criminal history, we're not going to let you in the building. Nope. They just let them walk right in. Again, that's the wavelength of thought that we're dealing with here in this business. So I think people should choose wisely, is basically my overall point. Okay, jab-related stuff. Here we go. A couple of catch-ups from last week regarding a couple of stories. First of all, the 500-page report on the so-called COVID-19 pandemic from the Committee on Oversight. This was released on December 2nd. I've read part of this. I've certainly read the summary points as well. The entire document, the 502-page document, exists on my website in 2 locations. You can find it under the Medical Documents tab, one section down after the Earth Clinic website, and then you can find it on the Government Documents tab at the bottom of that very long chronological list, being, of course, the bottom of the list being the most updated document that I have on there. How do I summarize this beyond its own summary? It's filled with half-truths. It's filled with verbiage and language that should lead someone to believe that there's a bigger problem here and that there are more lies associated with this than most people can possibly imagine. You also have to keep in mind it's a government document, and they're not going to tell you the full truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth. They have to step lightly on these eggshells here. That's why they use the term coronavirus pandemic. There was no coronavirus. There was no pandemic. There was only a manufactured injectable poison that was in injected poisons in 2019, if not the years earlier than that people took and injected into themselves. And then that gain of function term they use, quote unquote, was higher because the transmissibility was higher from the injected to the non-injected, thereby making the non-injected more sick and the injected sick as well. And then they said, well, look at all these symptoms. This isn't the flu. This is something else. By calling it something else than your average flu poison is an admission that you're making another poison. But when they say the words, it leaked out of a lab, they don't mean that someone dropped a vial on the ground, it started to smoke, like what you would see in a science fiction movie, and then a window opens, and then it leaks out of the window, and then it's in the air, and then people start breathing it, and then that's why they got sick. That's not what that leak, quote unquote, means, because that's ridiculous. Again, that's science fiction movie nonsense. What they mean is that it was purposefully put into numerous injections and then tossed out into general society worldwide for people to inject themselves with, thinking it was one thing when in fact it was something else. And then they got on airplanes. And then via electromagnetism, it was being transmitted from person to person, not because they were coughing and sneezing on people, but because, again, they were in close proximity to one another. They do, however, bring up the whole business of social distancing and how all of that is fake. Well, it's fake to an extent. Social distancing and the 6 feet rule is comical, and it is, again, not true when you have 2 individuals who are healthy. But when you have someone or a group of people who are unhealthy, who have been jabbed, who are shedding on people, yeah, being away from them is a good idea. Because again, they're radiating this poison on people via electromagnetism. Again, they're not going to bring that up, but that's the real reason. And by the way, my apologies here, this is 520 pages. And they have links again, and like I said, it's on my website too if you want to take a look at it. But here's sort of their origin story, and this is the origin, gain-of-function, federal government funding and research story that they lay out here. It says COVID-19 origin, most likely, notice how they use those words, emerged from a laboratory in Wuhan, China. The 5 strongest arguments in favor of the lab leak theory include, see, they're even calling it a theory, but they're publishing this almost like it's fact. This came from the United States. It also came from Ukraine. So you have Asian countries that experience this. You have the United States, of course, and Northern American countries that experience this, or Northern and Southern American countries, I should say, and certainly European countries as well. It says, number 1, the virus possesses a biological characteristic that is not found in nature. Okay. Number 2, it says, data shows that all COVID-19 cases stem from a single introduction into humans. This runs contrary to previous pandemics where there were multiple spillover events. Again, I don't even think they understand their word usage here and what it really means. They were injecting this into people. That's what this was. It was a giant lie and fraud that was perpetuated on normal jab takers and people who were around jabbed people. And then, of course, the introduction of the entire fake testing. Well, I'm sick, so now I'm going to take this test, and it tells me I have COVID because it's a COVID test, so it must be real. Again, if you dress up like Garfield and you eat lasagna, it doesn't make you Garfield. If you dress up like Elvis and play the guitar and shake your hips, it doesn't make you Elvis. It goes on, unfortunately. It says, Wuhan is the home to China's foremost SARS research lab, which has a history of conducting gain-of-function research at inadequate biosafety levels. Wuhan Institute of Virology researchers were sick with a COVID-like virus in the fall of 2019, months before COVID-19 was discovered at the wet market. It says, by nearly all measures of science, that's a funny way of putting that, if there was evidence of a natural origin, it would have already surfaced. It then says proximal origin publication, which was used repeatedly by public health officials and the media to discredit the lab leak theory, was promoted by Dr. Fauci. Again, they name names in this, which is very good. Gain-of-function research they bring up. EcoHealth Alliance Incorporated, Peter Daszak, a number of other individuals, NIH. Again, it's a damning document. I'll give them that because it calls these people out, but it's far worse than what this document even lays out. In fact, if you download just kind of in a quick summary here to wrap this up, if you download the PDF for free off of my website or even off of the internet, and in the search bar for terminology of the PDF, you type in biological weapons, it only pops up once. Just one time. In the 520 some odd pages, and it is 520 some odd pages, but even so, it only pops up one time. Now, weaponization pops up just a couple more times, but bioweapons only pops up once. In fact, more specifically, let me see here. If you type in, I'm looking at it right now. If you type in biological weapon in the search box, it says on page, on page 5 of 520, it's highlighted twice, the word weapons or weapon and biological in two separate paragraphs. But in the one paragraph at the top here where it says biological warfare, it says in November of 2024, Biden-Harris administration COVID-19 response coordinator, Dr. Ashish K. Iha, or Jeha, however the hell you say it, wrote that Chinese, quote, senior military officers have been writing for years about the potential benefit of offensive biological warfare, unquote. He also acknowledged that the COVID-19 virus might have accidentally leaked from a lab. So that's the only time you see the word biological. There's also this in an earlier page, or even, a later page, page 73, in one of these question and answer boxes by a Dr. Robert Gary on June 9th of 2023. The question, is that still resting on an assumption that that's not done, that they weren't testing suboptimal RBDs at some point? And then the answer they provided, I suppose, but why would you do that? I know, question mark. I mean, especially if you're thinking that this virus was somehow engineered to be a weapon, or at least to be a good pathogen, you wouldn't make a binding domain that was. As poor as your computer predicted, it would be for either one of those scenarios. So there's sort of a half admission that it was created to be a biological weapon, but they're openly saying, well, why would you do that? Well, it's simple. They want people to be dead, and they want to profit from people dying, because there's a depopulation agenda at play here. Again, with documents that size, it's always, what does the document not say? What is the document really not bringing up? It's a conclusion on what took place. Now, it's possible that the document could be used in a court of law down the line, and it could prosecute somebody, used in a military tribunal against somebody. Who's to say? I'm not sure. But it's basically a hard period, full stop on the entire quote-unquote COVID pandemic. There was no pandemic. Hospitals were empty. They were empty. It was massive number manipulation. Our ICUs are 100% full. They're packed beyond what they can maintain. Question, how many ICU beds do you have in your ICU? We have 4. So what you're saying is 4 people exist in your ICU who are sick. Are they ventilated? Well, yes, they are. So you're talking about 4 sick people that you crammed a tube down and you're going to kill them for profit. Yes, that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm telling you, you can use this entire document as a playground and as a word search. If in the search box of the PDF you type in Blue Cross Blue Shield, individually or collectively, including the word anthem, if you type in anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, or just the word anthem, guess how many times it pops up in the document? 0. 0 times. I thought Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield was engaged in kickback fraud regarding, again, ventilation and remdesivir and COVID testing and all of that. Seems like an odd thing to leave out of a government document. Unless, of course, government officials were told to leave it out of this document. Yeah, they cover a lot of different stuff. And they cover the suppression of the truth, and people were being made fun of and, calling it horse paste and all that other stuff. But what about the financial kickbacks from the insurance companies? Convenient that they seem to leave that one out. Again, in fact, if you type in the word insurance in the search box of the PDF, the word insurance pops up probably less than a dozen times, and it's all in relation to employment insurance. That individuals, again, who lost their job as a result of refusing to take the shots or do what they were told, they were losing their insurance through their employer. That's it. Again, it's not in relation to insurance companies receiving kickbacks. for making particular COVID measures, quote unquote, mandatory or in place, in particular in hospitals. It just has to do with individuals losing their insurance when they became unemployed for not playing the game. So again, like I said earlier, it's in documents like that are that large, where you can download the PDF and just start playing a word search game, and you're instantly going to figure out what they're covering and what they're not covering. In particular, of course, given the fact that I've been covering this subject since the start. And yeah, it's a government document. It doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. There are certain things that they would hit on and other things they would not. Certainly, they're not going to even speculate at the death toll on a global scale that's actually taken place here. They might throw around a couple million, a few million, maybe 10 million, but they're not going to get upwards of that because they don't want to. They reference VAERS, for example, in the 520 some odd page document, approximately on 10 pages. So, that's their go-to. Their go-to is the VAERS reporting, and that wasn't being widely used, and everybody knows that. So, yeah, it's government. And that's unfortunate. But this is good news, and this is going to get real jacked up also. This, again, is a nice reminder of almost the spring of 2022, when the first court-ordered Pfizer papers came out regarding what was in these shots and what was going on in the trials. This is from the Gateway Pundit. It says, "Judicial bombshell. Federal judge forces FDA to release over 1 million pages of Pfizer's COVID-19 trial documents they wanted to keep hidden for 75 years. Again, feels like deja vu all over again because we've been through this before, but they're releasing more documentation. Again, this is going to get real interesting. I'm going to go through some of these documents in the future when they hit their, particular websites on the internet, and I'll dive into some of it, no doubt about it. But again, this should be, you would think, more proof for the asleep, if the asleep are even paying attention to this, that why is it that the shots that they took and the companies who made them and the people who are in league with all of them, why is it that they wanted to keep this a secret? Is it because it's a good thing? Is it because it helps people? Or is it because it's part of a larger depopulation program to maim and kill? You would think this would get people to stop taking these shots, but again, this particular reporting on this particular story, of course, and this court order, isn't making the rounds on mainstream media, at least not to my knowledge. More alternative outlets, yeah, but again, this is the second time around for this. This is not the first time. And it's been an ongoing thing. Now, speaking of an ongoing thing, and again, this, of course, isn't good news, and it's something that I've brought up before in the past, and a lot of people have discussed this, but it has to do, of course, with the heart injury. And all of the heart-related conditions as a result of taking these shots, but more specifically, the undiagnosed heart trouble that people have no idea that they've been negatively impacted as a result, typically again among the injected, although there's no reason to believe that the non-injected who have been shed on might also have particular heart trouble as well. That's the horrible nature again of this shedding, is you have individuals who didn't take the shots who are getting cancer because they are around individuals who have taken them. So this is from America First by Ethan Huff of Natural News, and it was titled, "More than 100 million fully jabbed Americans now suffer from irreversible heart damage, so saith Dr. Thomas Levy." It says the death and injury toll from the Wuhan coronavirus COVID-19 vaccine, quote-unquote, continues to mount, with Dr. Thomas Levy warning that the number of fully vaccinated people who now suffer from irreversible heart damage has or soon will eclipse 100 million. This is a renowned cardiologist and attorney at law who works as a contributing editor to the Orthomolecular Medicine News Service and consults with Live on Labs. Levy explained to investigative journalist Steve Kirsch, not a fan of his, but either way, recently how the spike protein in the injections have a profoundly damaging impact on the human heart. Now, again, here's the thing. This is the part, again, of the contents of the shot that are almost irrelevant. People have said that there are no spike proteins in the shots. People have said it's just the nanotech. And they've even said, again, there's no messenger RNA. It's just DNA of other foreign substances, other animals, fetal cells, you name it. That this name game and this name switching that's taking place is confusing for people. It's really one set of names instead of another set of names that's been used. My take is sort of the middle road. I don't care what name's being used. We know it's poison. We know it's having a short-term, immediate, and long-term impact on these individuals as well. It says here toward the bottom of this article, it says, quote, myocarditis, which simply means inflammation of some or all of the muscle cells in the heart, can occur when the spike protein binds to the blood vessels in the heart, to the muscle cells themselves, or both, Levy says. Again, you can replace spike protein with nanotechnology. That's a word change I would recommend people use. He went on and said chest X-ray, electrocardiogram, ECG, and echocardiogram can all be used to help establish the diagnosis of myocarditis. An elevated troponin level on blood testing is extremely sensitive in picking up any ongoing heart muscle cell damage, and some elevation of this test will also be seen, or always be seen rather, if any significant inflammation is present in those muscle cells, unquote. So again, I'm going to leave it there for the jab-related stuff, but again, it's a sad subject, and it's a sad state of affairs here. And I think what's equally as sad is the number of people who have no idea that this is even happening. They have absolutely no clue, and that's of course not good. I know that goes without saying, but this is a big issue here. So those health problems are probably going to get worse for those individuals. I would encourage people to pray for those individuals as always, and yeah, the chips will fall where they fall. I have one quick wireless body area network story here. I saw this commercial the other day. I even put this video out on my socials, and it's true, and it's very real. You can get on Amazon and type in Astro Robot, and that's what pops up. It is a Amazon-built Astro Robot, as it's called, Amazon Astro. Household robot for home monitoring with Alexa, includes a Ring home trial. So yes, it's a subscription. Yes, it connects to your Ring doorbell. And it is a robot that rolls around on the ground with what looks like an iPad with eyeballs on it. There is a microphone, a camera, and motion sensors all around the actual device. It also has an extendable camera that shoots out of the back of it, that shoots up probably 5 feet tall, 4.5, 5 feet tall out of the actual robot itself. There's a downloadable app, so that when you're not home, your robot will be rolling around inside of your house monitoring everything, and you can see what the robot is seeing. So is this an inter-home security device? It would probably be sold to people that way. I can't imagine anybody spending $1,600 on this. But there have to be people who do, and it is available exclusively by invitation. And it ships from and sold by Amazon.com. It says, keep home closer, meet Astro, the household robot for home monitoring with Alexa. It's a combination of everything that's horrible. It says, stay connected from anywhere remotely, send Astro to check on specific rooms, people, or things. Plus, get alerts if Astro detects an unrecognized person or certain sounds when you're away. Again, wireless body area network. Keep your phone on you all the time, so when your robot wants to tell you something, you get a notification, and then you're hooked to your phone more so than you already are. It says, introducing intelligent motion. Amazon Astro uses advanced navigation technology to find its way around your home and go where you need it. When you're not using Astro, it will hang out close by at the ready. Set up custom routines to get the most out of Astro. Cue Astro to read your traffic news during rush hour or remind you to feed your pet. Because you need all these reminders because you're a moron. What is happening here? What is going on? Designed to protect your privacy, it says. Horseshit. Turn off mics, cameras, and motion with one press of a button. and use the Astro app to set out of bounds zones to let Astro know where it's not allowed to go. Oh, I bet Astro goes wherever it wants. I bet when you turn that off button, it can turn itself back on anytime it wants. Who's to say it even goes off when you hit the off button? It says Ring Home Premium. Subscribe to Ring Home Premium or activate your Ring Home trial and have Astro proactively patrol, investigate, activity, save videos in Ring's cloud storage for up to 180 days and more. Put Alexa in motion. Astro can also follow you with music or video playing from its high-quality speakers or deliver calls, messages, timers, alarms, and reminders. Accessorize your Astro. Astro can carry a variety of accessories sold separately like a Ziploc container, an Omron blood pressure monitor, and a Furbo dog camera that tosses treats to your pet. You can also dress up your Astro with an It's a Skin wheel decal. The wireless body area network, ladies and gentlemen, don't say it's not real. Don't let your friends tell you it's not real. And don't say it's not designed to enslave people. It most certainly is. And yes, it will make you ill as well. Nothing like a little wireless device rolling around the floor of wherever you live, constantly plugged into the internet, creating an entire wireless area network inside of your home larger than the one that already exists. You don't keep your phone on you, don't worry, Astro's right at your heels to remind you that you need to keep your phone on you. Radiating all over everybody, including your pets. Oh my God. I hope people can see this. This is real. This is not good. Artificial intelligence is a bad thing. Kill these robots. Kill them all. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. I will catch you on Wednesday. Peace.
Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.